Hello all, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, Neil, I can see you nice and clear, and Mark, I can see you as well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You sound great.
Great. Going on mute.
How about me? Can you hear me all right?
Yep, sound good.
Excellent.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Clint, how are you?
Hey, good.
Hi, Clint.
Nice cows.
Yeah.
I decided to get into the water of Purple Park. I'm in a small inner tube.
I'm gonna go back to the Japanese cherry blossom.
Oh, that's nice. I think Mark should be in outer space. I think that's just appropriate. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
I think I'm going to do the Aurora Borealis.
Ooh, that's even better.
Kevin, I show you as a co-host, so do you have the functionality that we were looking at earlier?
Yep. No, it's all good.
All right, thanks for helping.
Oh, that's better.
So, Clint, are you still on your 14-day isolation?
I am. Feeling good.
Good.
Hi, Ken. Welcome.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Just fine.
Perfect. Are we live to the world yet?
We're live to anybody who wishes to jump in, yes, and it's being recorded, and then we'll figure out a way to post it on the website as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Clint and I were exchanging some emails earlier today on some of the functionality with this. This is the business version of this software. There's an enhanced version that's called the webinar version that is scalable and has a little bit more user friendliness if this ends up being something that we need to use going forward.
Okay.
So this is a good dip of the toe in the Zoom software pool.
My agency just transitioned to Zoom as well. I would be happy to provide feedback as I use it more often.
Yeah, that would be great. Do you know if they're using the webinar version or using the business version like this?
I can find that out.
And Mark and Neil, your chat posts came through.
Good.
Excellent.
I will.
Oh, and there's Matt.
And then
Clint, your chats are coming through.
Okay, good.
Are the chats going to be available to the public as well? Or is that just for?
They will be. They'll be part of the recording as well.
All right.
I'm not seeing video of Matt or Leslie or Nadine. Is that by design, or is that just a limit on how many?
No,
Well,
there's no limit. They're choosing
get
not to.
it.
Anybody can choose to not have video.
Okay,
See Matt.
I see. If I toggle, I have to just toggle through the images up here at the top. Okay. I can choose who I look at.
Yeah, I think once the screen gets to 49 people, it might not let any more people be visible, or you have to scroll through them. That was one of the delimiters with this version of the software.
Yes. My son is doing driver's ed at home with 89 people on Zoom. Seems to be working well.
Another option is to switch to the, I guess, the other view where you've got like all the little pieces, and then it just highlights a little yellow box around who's speaking.
Mhm.
You can see more people on a window.
Yeah, they on iPad it looks like gallery view versus
Yeah.
switching to an active speaker. But I think once it gets to 49 people, then it just stops.
There's
Hi,
Kendra.
Ken, can you hear us?
Hi, Kendra. I think you're muted.
You're muted.
No, it's.
Kendra, can you hear us? No. So Kendra, I'm gonna unmute everybody simultaneously and see if that helps. Kendra, can you go ahead and say something and see if we can hear you through the internet? Nothing? All right, so alternatively, Kendra, you can call in with your phone and then just be sure and have the volume off. Well, I guess it's not catching you anyway, but I will send you the connection number. If you look at the email that I sent you, it's got the phone number that you can call in. I'll send you that as well.
You can also check your audio settings on how you connected your audio, your computer audio.
Have we heard from Laura or Kevin Ryan or Laura?
I haven't heard anything, no.
I haven't.
There's Kevin.
I think I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine.
Great, thank you.
Sandy, can you hear us and talk to us? Sandy Hammerly, just checking your audio.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, very good. Nice statue.
I think so.
All right, we've got TJ on there. Don't see Laura. Does anybody?
Here's Laura just popped up.
Okay.
She's in the waiting room. She'll pop up here in a moment.
All right. Is Phyllis
Cheers.
going to be joining us to do town clerk functions?
She was going to give it a shot, but I will fill in her stead if
Okay.
she's not able to log in.
All right. Are we ready to, or Kendra, do we have audio with Kendra now? Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great.
Good.
We were just trying to get Kendra's audio working, but otherwise I think we're getting pretty close to go time.
Okay.
Good job, staff, putting this all together, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Very well done.
Oh, thank you for that. Kendra, is that your phone?
Yes.
Okay.
If you have headphones, put in headphones from your laptop.
Or phone.
I'm going to mute you for a second.
Yeah, mute me.
Do we want to see if Kendra could try from a different device or something to maybe get a little better results on the audio?
Okay, I'm going to unmute Kendra and see if this works. Kendra, anything?
No, that's not working. Okay, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna try something different.
Well, whatever you just did worked.
Well, I'm just not in the meeting anymore. I'm just on my phone, so that's fine. I could just be on the phone.
Okay, do you want to do that or do you want to try something different?
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I'll just be on the phone. That's totally fine.
Okay, are everyone else ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for this Friday, March 20th, 2020. Could we please have someone do the roll call? Martin?
Clint Folsom.
Yes, here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Laura Sklazinski.
Here.
Sandy Hammerly.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here, still here.
Oh, sorry. And then Neil Shaw
Here.
and Ken Lish.
I'm here too.
And Mark.
And Mark Basis. All right, who else did I forget?
Town manager,
I'm here.
town attorney.
Here.
All right,
Okay.
Kendra, I know you're on the phone, so I think we're all here.
Okay, very good, everyone. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I'd like to suggest a change to the agenda. So after items 3 and 4, I'd like to offer time for board members to make announcements, ask any questions or make any remarks to the community, just given the situation that we're in, why we're having this virtual meeting, and just kind of what's going on in the community overall. So I'd like to offer that after items 3 and 4. And then I'd like to offer an opportunity for public comment for those that are logged into the meeting and would like to do public comment. And we do have the functionalities to do that. So if ever, any other changes to the agenda from board members?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve with the mayor's changes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis and second by Trustee Skrzynski. All those in favor? We're going to have to do a roll call vote on everything. So Martin, if
We
you
do.
Martin, if you could do that, please. Someone mute
Sure.
the dog.
Kevin Ryan,
Yes.
Laura Skrzynski,
Yes.
Neil Shaw,
Yes.
Ken Lish,
Yes.
Sandy Hammerly,
Yes.
Clint Folsom,
Yes.
and Mark Lasis.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone. That passes unanimously. At this time, I'd like to move on to item number 3, which is adoption of a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a remote meeting policy. Kendra, would you or Matt like to introduce this item?
Sure, I'm happy to. And then Matt, if you want to add anything. This is a pretty basic virtual meeting policy. It expressly allows virtual meetings only in the case of emergencies. This qualifies as emergency. It does not allow for remote participation for any other reason. It also does not allow for remote participation of one member while the rest are in the same place. This is really supposed to be a completely virtual policy. It's pretty general, as you've all seen. It's supposed to be general sort of to allow for changing technologies and changing software and things like that. So, and then the one thing you will notice is typically we would not allow for quasi-judicial hearings in a remote virtual meeting, but we have allowed for that here. The reason is because we need life to continue on. And so what I've done here is required a waiver from the applicant. Erie's had 3 of these already, and we've gotten the applicant waiver each time, and it's actually worked pretty well. The public has been able to comment as necessary, and the technology's worked well, and we have not had any issues. So again, while I would reserve this for emergencies, which we're in right now, it seems like this policy is a good one and will work well. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, though.
Okay, thanks, Kendra. Board members have any questions or thoughts on this item?
What's the sunsetting of this policy, Kendra?
So basically, whenever we think it's appropriate, and I will work with the mayor and the town manager to determine when that should end. So basically, if you see the policy, it simply says when it's implemented, you're implementing it now. I think we can end it at any time. Right now, as far as I know, most of the governors and CDPHE's declarations end on April 30th currently, subject to change. I'm not sure if you all want to go that long. If you'd like to put a sunset in this resolution today, we can certainly do that. If you would like to set a time certain that this will be over with, I think it's just really hard to say right now how long this needs to last.
I mean, personally, I would like to have the flexibility of just having this on the books right now and not have it sunset artificially.
I agree with Mark on that. I'd rather see how this plays out rather than put an actual end date on it.
And my reading of the actual policy itself, since there's a requirement that both the town board and the state of Colorado have declared emergencies, could just in essence sunset this as soon as our state of emergency lapses or we withdraw it.
I would agree with that.
That as well.
I mean, arguably, if it just stays on the books, even after the town and the state lists their state of emergency, it can live on until any future date, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Sandy or Kevin, do you have any comments on this?
I have nothing to add. I'm fine with
Nothing
it
to add.
being just the way it is.
Okay.
Yep, agree.
One question I have is with regard to the state of emergency and what that entails. I can definitely foresee that there might be some point in the future, maybe within 2 to 3 months, where we're still trying to practice social distancing, but we're not necessarily declaring a state of emergency. I guess I would look to the rest of the board. Do we think in a couple months, when people are more used to social distancing, and maybe we're not quarantined, would we still want to declare a state of emergency at that point?
With that later.
Yeah, I mean, Laura, I think it's a good question. I think the way I'm looking at the resolution, we have some flexibility, right? And I
guess
think
my concern is with tying it to the state of emergency, only because I can see that there might be a point at which we don't necessarily want to have everyone up in arms that it's a state of emergency, but we still aren't comfortable meeting in person. And I suppose we could always amend this resolution at that point as needed, but I see that coming up, and I'd rather not take more time at a future meeting.
I think it's a really good point. Regardless of whether there's a disaster declaration or emergency declaration, if what we're hearing from CDPHE or the governor or whoever is saying that, you know, social distancing is something that we should continue to practice, which it is, until there's no longer a threat from, you know, contagious virus like COVID-19. We should just have this on the books as long as possible and not have to burden ourselves with an administrative, procedure to adopt this again to give us the flexibility of meeting remotely.
Just legally, I would think that if for some reason the state's state of emergency or the state's emergency declaration ends, then we may want to adopt a different policy. If that's the case, if we don't have a state of emergency, I don't know that I would advise meeting remotely. But I think we should probably tackle that when it happens. I'm just really worried again about the quasi-judicial hearings. The rest of the meeting is fine, but quasi-judicial, it's a pretty high bar, and I'm concerned that if we do that without any declared state of emergency, we could be setting ourselves up. It's really going to depend what everyone else does. The other thing is at the legislature, if they ever reconvene, there's talk about allowing this full time because other states already have this full time. Alaska, for example, allows remote meetings at all times for all matters, including quasi-judicial matters. So if we were, I guess what I'm saying is I think we should adopt this now as it's written. And then if we hear that the state is going to lift its state of emergency, maybe we should address a new policy then.
I agree with Kendra. I'd rather not try to guess what we're going to try to do a month or two from now, and let's just keep it as is, tied to the state of emergency.
Well, so one situation I'm thinking of is on Saturday when I thought that I might have been exposed to COVID. We had not yet declared a state of emergency, and yet I know everyone did not want to meet with me in person. So I think that may be the case in the future where we don't have a state of emergency, but we don't necessarily want to have everyone meeting in person. And I want us to be prepared for that.
And I would think that if we do need to amend this policy, we would amend it prior to it lapsing. So we still have that opportunity and won't be in that situation for the foreseeable future.
I'm certainly fine to go ahead and approve this as is. I just feel strongly that we're going to need to come back to it in the future. I think right now, today, we have a fairly light agenda and an hour set for it. So in my opinion, now is a good time to set whatever provisions we may need, versus at future board meetings, we may have a lot of other things on the agenda, whether quasi-judicial or not.
Just a question, so the virtual meeting policy we're talking about today, the mayor was able to adopt it or ratify it. Now we're ratifying it. If at some date in the future we need a new policy, arguably Mayor Folsom can enact it, and then the board will reconvene within 7 days to ratify it, correct?
If it's an emergency. So the only way that this can happen is because of the emergency. What I'm saying is if the emergency is gone, it's going to require action by the board, not by the mayor unilaterally.
And that's where I think it gives us more flexibility and also provides more transparency to our residents if we announce this policy ahead of time.
Well, would it make more sense to just have something like this on the books, and then in the event that the emergency lapses, then it goes away. We don't have the ability to meet remotely, but in the event of a future emergency, we don't have to then convene another meeting to adopt this policy. Like the policy is already on the books. It gets triggered with the emergency declaration, and then we're good to go. We ratify the emergency declaration at that meeting, but we don't have to adopt another remote meeting policy.
My question is, would we always want to declare a state of emergency in that case? And I apologize, maybe I should have asked for the state of emergency to be on the agenda before this one. But again, with Saturday's situation, would we have wanted to declare a state of emergency just because I had potentially been exposed?
This is a state and a local. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Kendra.
No, I was just going to say this requires both. The mayor and I discussed it, and this requires both the state and the local. So the policy, so that's when the policy comes into play. I think, Laura, what you're asking for is fine. It's just a different policy. There are policies out there which allow trustees to call in if they're ill. Most of my clients don't have that for a reason, because they don't think people should be participating remotely. Now, this whole situation we're in right now may change all of that thinking. But right now, only the city of North Glen allows that, that I know of, outside of emergency. So I do think you guys could talk about having a policy like this, and it's something we should discuss. I'm just not sure I think they're different policies. And I think what Trustee Lasis was saying was, if we just put this one on the books, we'll have it. If we need another one, then maybe we look at it then. It's going to require some pretty substantial rewriting, I think, to change this now, which I'm happy to do, but that's all I'm saying.
I'm fine to approve this policy now, but I do feel strongly that we will need that second policy on the books within the next couple of months. I would like to discuss kind of what should be included in that now and get our board to come to consensus, just given that we have the time today. But if the rest of the board wants to cover that at a later date, then I guess we can do that. I just would prefer to save our later agendas for more substantial items.
But it might make more sense to wait to a later date, because if the state's going to do something to allow municipalities to remote in, it'd be better to have that information and then adopt a policy.
Okay.
I think I agree on this, our very first virtual meeting. We've got a big learning curve to get through, and I'd say let's adopt this one, get this behind us. And this is an evolving situation, but I agree with you, Laura. We're probably going to be revisiting this again, and there will be some opportunities for this again. And I think this whole event is going to force a lot of changes, and some perhaps for the better. So we'll, but I think we need to kind of see directionally where everything's going before we try to figure that out.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or discussion on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Just one thing, are you going to allow public comment on each agenda item, or are you going to wait till the end of the meeting?
That's a good point. We could offer opportunity for public comment on this item. If anyone in the public would like to comment, maybe either type a chat message or do the hand raise feature so we can recognize you. Any public comment? All right.
I'll make a motion then.
Okay, go ahead.
To approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-24, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a remote meeting policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, we had motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis and second by Trustee Lish. And Martin, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Laura Sklajinsky,
Yes.
Neil Shaw,
Yes.
Kevin Ryan,
Yes.
Ken Lish,
Yes.
Mark Lasis,
Yes.
Sandy Hammerly,
Yes.
Clint Folsom.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is item number 4, is adoption of a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior declaring a local disaster emergency. Matt or Kendra, you want to introduce this item?
Yeah, so as everybody knows, the mayor issued a declaration of emergency on March 15th. That expires after 7 days, which is March 22nd. So to extend that to 30 days, the board needs to ratify the declaration and resolution before you does that.
Okay, thanks. Kendra, do you have anything to add on that?
No, that's correct. Happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. All right, any board questions or discussion?
So just to confirm how I'm reading this, we will have to, assuming that there's a need for a declaration to continue, we'll have to re-ratify this within the next 30 days.
That's correct. So we can, if you would rather not do it for longer, for example, like I said, I think the last order from the governor was April 30th. If you would rather that this go through April 30th, we can do that as well. I had originally put 30 days in here because we weren't really sure what was going on. So it's completely up to you all.
I'd love to change it to the 30th.
Agreed.
Could we tie it to coincide to anything that the state has done? So to the extent that Governor Polis, a week from now says actually the disaster declaration state of emergency is going to continue until June 15th, that would essentially extend our disaster declaration automatically so we could avoid the need to reconvene a special meeting?
Yeah, that's a good idea if that's what you all would like to do.
That's a good idea, Mark. Appreciate that.
That would be my preference.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would support that also.
I'm comfortable with that.
Kevin or Laura or Neil, any comments?
No, I agree with it. I agree with it, James.
Good suggestion.
Okay.
So it would be, we're extending it for 30 days or in the alternative, any additional length set forth by the state.
That's good. Is that how you all want to read?
Kendra, repeat that, please.
I'm sorry. We could say what Trustee Lasis just said, make it 30 days or until the termination of the state's emergency declaration, or we can simply say until the state's emergency declaration expires.
I think the latter makes more sense, until the state declaration of emergency expires.
I'm fine with that.
I agree.
And just so the public is aware of what we're doing with this declaration of emergency, we're just in unprecedented times here with this virus spreading throughout the world, and our community is part of that. And this declaration of emergency was done to elevate the issue in people's minds and also to allow for the town of Superior to be eligible to receive additional resources and funding should that be of benefit to our community getting through this. So that is the reason. As of my last communication with the town manager, we did not have any confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the town of Superior. I would bet that there probably are cases of individuals that maybe have not been tested, have not been able to get tested, and it probably is in our community. Maybe just has not kind of reached the radar of just because of the difficulty in getting tested. But that's really the reason for this declaration of emergency. And I imagine there'll be some more comments afterwards from individuals, myself and other trustees, about kind of what we're doing in the community and what we would like everyone in the community to be aware of to kind of help us get through this crisis.
I do have one question about the proposed change, and just because I'm not overly familiar with all the secondhand effects. Kendra, are there any reasons why we would want our emergency declaration to be in effect longer than the state of Colorado, whether it's for funding purposes, for receiving relief, or any other reason, whereas there would be an unintended consequence if it ends at the exact same time as the state of Colorado's declaration?
That's a good question. I would say the only issue I see is, and there has been talk about this, is that there may be, the state may withdraw its statewide emergency declaration, but Denver, for example, Denver and Eagle County will remain with theirs because they have so many more cases. So Eagle particularly, Eagle is really suffering at this point. So what I would say is the only concern there would be if Superior suddenly has a huge uptick in the number of cases and the state decides, hey, we're going to drop the statewide declaration. The only concern would be if you have a lot of cases at that point, you may want to make your declaration continue despite the state one being withdrawn.
Given that, I'm not necessarily supportive of our current change in language. I'd rather keep ours independent of the state, not knowing how things will progress. I'd rather just look at an extension of 60 days instead of 30 days. That way we don't have to go over this every month, but it gives us the power to extend it based off our specific circumstances here within Superior.
I agree with Ken. I'd prefer to have the flexibility to not be tied to the state.
Well, what if we had a provision that just said that, okay, so we're going to extend it for a certain period of time, whether it's 30 or 60 days. But in the event that the state extends it, our disaster declaration will automatically extend, but we will not sunset to coincide with the state's disaster declaration, that it'll be 15 days or 30 days after the state's, which would give us the flexibility to, take action. I'm just trying to ease the administrative burden here so we don't have to continue to redesignate it.
If Kendra is comfortable writing it that way, I am fine with that.
Sure. So you would like it, do we want to say 30, 60? Do we want to say, will you just tell me which you prefer? And then if the state's declaration is extended, ours shall automatically extend. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So I would recommend 60 days, but in the event that the state extends beyond that time, we would automatically extend, and then we would extend to the point that the state extends it to, but then we should give ourselves some period of time after the state's extension. So say the state extends it for 120 days, then we have maybe 15 days after that period of time when ours will automatically sunset, and that'll give us the opportunity to extend it if we want. So I'm just thinking out loud here.
So instead of even talking about 60 or 30 or 90 days up front, why don't we just put it in as whatever the state's end date is of their state of emergency plus 15 or 30, however many days we want. And then that gives us the flexibility to adjust after they make that decision.
So really what we're going to say is the town's declaration shall be effective for 15 days following expiration of the state's.
That makes sense to me.
I'm not sure. I don't want to overthink this, but for me, it's almost, I don't personally want to necessarily go past the end date of the state unless there's a compelling reason. Now, if there's a compelling reason, we're going to know in advance. we now have the ability to have a virtual meeting. We could extend it. I don't know if I necessarily want to have an automatic extension of a state of emergency of 15 days past the state of emergency. The day this thing ends at the state level, I want to, assuming it's safe, go out and hug a neighbor and pop the champagne, right? And I don't want to do that if that's still a state of emergency in our town. And so I don't really want to overcomplicate this thing and have an automatic, have ours be longer than the state's unless it's necessary. And if it's necessary, the 7 of us are going to get together and extend it. So I almost wonder if we're making this more complicated. I'm not against what Ken said, extending the 30 days to 60 days. If the state ends theirs early, then we'll come together and end ours early, and that'll be great. If this continues for months, and God help us if it does, then we'll get together and extend it. But I think we're trying to create some language here that I'm not sure we're going to find the right balance due to some just complexity. So I'm good with 30 or 60, and then we'll just have to revisit it. We'll make it a, consent agenda item, and hopefully it'll be, 15 seconds of conversation. I'm not overly worried about the administrivia of extending this.
To Ken's original point, I just would prefer to not tie it to the state because circumstances may be different here in Superior.
Yeah. So
I agree, but what I just heard, real quick, Ken, sorry. But what I just heard was it'll be the state plus 15. And I also don't want to tie it to the state. Let's just,
Yeah.
we had a good resolution for an additional 30 days. If we want to make it the end of April, I'm good with that. If we don't think 30 days is good, we want to make it 60 days so we could plan these virtual meetings. I'm also good with that. But no, if this thing ends in 3 weeks, I want the state of emergency for Superior taken off the books. And I hope it does end in 2 or 3 weeks, as I know all of you do as well. So
I hope that that's the case, but I think it's unlikely to be the case. So I would really like us to have this through at least April 30th, regardless of what the state does.
This is such a non-local issue, right? This is a national issue. This is a state issue. This is a regional issue. So I think it makes sense to tie it to something bigger than the town, because it's not going to be a situation where, while I can foresee a situation where, the state kind of pulls back, but you're going to still have, Eagle counties, you're going to have Denver's, you're going to have these kind of larger regional areas that are affected. I don't think that we're going to have 4 square miles of Superior that is like uniquely affected. You're going to have the greater Front Range affected. So I just think that it makes sense for us to tie it to something bigger than ourselves.
I don't think we're necessarily going to be uniquely affected. However, I support our ability to make decisions independent of the decisions the state is making. When it comes to matters of public health and safety, I think we've taken the lead where the state hasn't on things like Jefferson Parkway, on things like oil and gas. I think this is another instance where I would just like us to be able to have the flexibility to protect our residents, no matter what the state and federal government are doing.
I think going back to the original part of this, or the earlier part of this discussion, where we were going to extend it to the point in time where the governor has stated, was it May, somewhere in May, to me that probably makes the most sense. And then we extend it as needed. This is going to change in the next week, in the next couple of weeks. I mean, things are changing so quick and so dynamic. We've been in this now a week, and so much has happened in the last week. So I agree. I agree we should not have it state plus a time period, because that may or may not apply to us. We may want it longer. We may want it shorter. I think a state of emergency implies that we have something that people need to pay particular attention to in our community, and that may or may not match what's happening in the state. But I think at this point, to me, it makes sense to extend it to at least what the state is doing, and then we revisit it as needed. But having us tied to the state, it does have the benefit of people communicating to our residents that yes, this is serious, and we are in concert with what the state is saying, and people need to take this seriously. I appreciate the governor doing what he did on the the ban on restaurants. It would have been very difficult for us to do that in Superior, but our neighboring municipalities not do that. So I think it's very important that we tie these decisions that we're making to municipalities in the region and ideally in the state.
Clay, I tend to agree with you because I think we're trying to write or craft a resolution that doesn't require administrative, heavy lifting down the path. But I mean, if we need to extend it, but we need to get together to discuss it. I'm all for it, being tied, as Mark alluded to. I mean, this is a big thing across the planet, and as much as we can look to our governor to lead the way, if we think Superior needs to deviate, let's get on the phone, let's get on a virtual meeting and have that conversation. I'm not in favor of trying to craft an administrative, workaround so that we don't have to get together to discuss this. Because if we ultimately do want to extend it for Superior for a longer period of time, we should absolutely have the conversation. So I'm all for tying it to a state, whether that's April 30th or some date to be determined. That's fine. But for some arbitrary sunset that's past the state date, absent a conversation, I just don't see it. I don't see the need for that.
So it sounds like we're landing on April 30th. I'm fine supporting that.
There was a date though that someone mentioned earlier that the governor has extended the state's state of emergency to, and I thought it was in May, or is it April 30th?
I guess the 30th of April.
I don't think the governor has put an end date on this declaration. I used April 30th earlier because that is, I believe, the latest date that I've heard NEC, PDHE order, or governor's order extended to. So I just picked that date because that's the last date I am aware of.
Okay.
All right.
So why would we arbitrarily put a date on a policy? I mean, if we have an emergency, we have an emergency, and then when we don't have an emergency, we lift it.
Well, no, this is the resolution declaring the emergency, so that's why we need a date.
But I thought you just said that the governor didn't necessarily tie the state's declaration to a sunset provision.
Right, but the state doesn't have to, we do.
So why don't we make this easy? I think we're overthinking it still. How about we just say 60 days and we'll revisit it in 60 days?
I think that makes sense.
That's fine with me.
I'm fine with that. Just confirming though that we can, if for some reason in 45 days we determine that it's not needed anymore, we can lift it. Is that correct, Kendra? Did you say yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion on that? Any public comment? If anyone in the public that's listening or watching would like to make any comments, please type a message in the chat or indicate with a hand raise. Not seeing any.
Clint, can you hear me?
Hi, TJ, yes.
Yeah, my video is muted for some reason. I can't get it to come on, so I apologize. Hello, everyone. I had a question regarding commercial evictions. I wanted to ask Kendra specifically, if the trustees wanted to prohibit commercial evictions, let's say during and 90 days beyond a declared state of emergency in Superior, could the trustees declare that legally?
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to do some research.
Okay. I think there's going to be a lot of commercial tenants in Superior, a lot of small local business owners that are going to be in a lot of trouble on their leases with the lengthy delay of closure. And so I wanted to see if there was anything that the town had the legal ability to do to prohibit evictions for a certain period of time. I don't know whether that's legal, but I thought I would bring it up and ask if Kendra could look into that and see if that's something the town could pass and enforce, even if it just gave commercial tenants a litigation remedy in the event that they were told to evict, told to leave their premises. So that is what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, TJ, thank you for that comment. And I imagine that will be a discussion point that other jurisdictions are going to be having as well, because this is not certainly, unfortunately, not a situation unique to Superior, and look forward to getting some more information on that. Is there any other members of the public that would like to have any public comment at this time? All right, I'm not seeing any.
I'll make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
I move to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-25, Series 2020, a resolution of the Town Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior declaring a local disaster emergency, with the amendment to the written resolution that the declaration shall be effective for 60 days rather than 30 days, and may be extended or terminated by additional action of the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
All right, motion by Trustee Lish. Was that second by Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
All right, motion and a second, and I'd like Martin to have a roll call vote, please.
Laura Sklodzinski,
Yes.
Neil Shaw,
Yes.
Kevin Ryan,
Yes.
Ken Lish,
Yes.
Mark Lasis,
Yes.
Sandy Hammerly,
Yes.
Clint Folsom.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Motion passes unanimously. All right, at this time, we are done with the 2 agenda items that we had, items 3 and 4, and would like to offer an opportunity now for board members to have any announcements that you wanted to make from the last couple of weeks, or just general statements about what's going on in the community. So I'll take anyone that would like to start.
I'll go first. A couple of things that I just wanted to bring to the board's attention. So New York, California have issued shelter-in-place orders. So has Illinois about an hour ago. Last night, the governor of Pennsylvania passed a executive order, or issued an executive order with respect to non-life sustaining businesses that they needed to close. A lot of people were expecting Governor Polis today during his press conference to issue a shelter-in-place order. He did not yet, but seemed to indicate that that's still on the table. I mean, it's certainly something that we should be anticipating and preparing for. Mayor Hancock yesterday kind of gave the impression that Denver is not interested in doing its a standalone shelter-in-place order, and believes that a policy like that should come from the top, because it is really difficult to enforce a shelter-in-place order that, one jurisdiction has it, but another jurisdiction doesn't, and they're just, across the town lines. So that's something that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. The other thing is, with respect to, I think the spring storm that we just had was actually kind of a blessing, because it got a lot of the kids out of the parks. But I'm seeing a lot of groups of kids playing in parks, playing on playground equipment, and I think that it would be beneficial for something to come from the board, from the town, about the importance of social distancing. And frankly, I don't know if there has been a clear statement from the state, but I've certainly heard concerns about people using playground equipment, kids climbing on jungle gyms and monkey bars, and the ability of that to then spread the virus. So I think that it would be important for the town to put out some communication to the public about what our position is with respect to social distancing and the use of our parks, because it's certainly fine for people to be going on walks, going on runs, but we want to make sure that people are limiting groups to groups of no more than 10. And I'm seeing groups larger than 10 in our parks, and certainly lots of kids using our playground equipment, which is a concern. So that was just something that I wanted to bring up to the board and see what everybody's thoughts are on that.
Mark, I completely agree with you. I think we ought to put out a statement that people should not really be using the playgrounds at all right now. To your point, it's fine to go out for walks, fine to go out for runs, But if you go out, you really shouldn't be touching anything. And by definition, our playgrounds are where you're putting your hands all over everything. Even if people aren't doing it in groups, the COVID-19 is sticking around on surfaces for hours and days. So just because your kid is the only one at the playground doesn't mean it's a safe place to be. And I'd like to see us communicate that to the public very strongly.
Matt, can we use a visual deterrent as well, whether it's just yellow caution tape or whatever, and just wrap that around playground or something to that effect? I mean, no one's going to be there to enforce this 24/7, but if we can at least put the onus out there that it is on the parents to make a good decision, and that they'll have to actually cross a line or barrier, I think that might be more effective.
So there's been quite a bit of communication amongst city managers on this item. What most cities have been doing is promoting social distancing, putting up signs, and spraying down the playgrounds on a daily basis. What we're finding hard to do is enforce keeping people off playgrounds. We just don't have the resources. Cities don't have the resources to keep families off the playgrounds. But so we've been moving towards putting up signs, keeping the playgrounds as clean as we possibly can, and just the messaging for social distancing.
Yeah, from my perspective, this is not something that, we're never going to be able to enforce, people making the right decisions. What we want to do is we want to just kind of remind people and educate them about the importance of making the right decisions. So I don't know if I necessarily think that, wrapping, playgrounds with caution tape is the right move. Some signage could work, and considering, the winds that we have here, I don't know if that caution tape is going to actually withstand the elements. So some signage, and then just communication from the town, stressing the importance of not taking unnecessary risks, and not only just for your family but for others is important. And I think that needs to come from the town.
I agree. I think the closure of playground equipment might have the same kind of effect of closing restaurants in one community, not the other. If we close all of our stuff, but it's not closed in all the surrounding communities, we're just in essence saying, don't play here, but go over there. And that's, we don't want that. We want people to stay locally. And if the weather's nice and they can go out and do things on their own, I don't think it's possible to rope off every possible inch of the community that people might touch. So I don't know that I would support that, but if we get to this shelter in place idea, I think that comes from the top, and that's what, in essence, that's saying is don't go out of your house and do anything.
I really disagree with that. I think, yes, we can't do anything about neighboring jurisdictions and closing their playgrounds, but we can do what's right for our residents, which is say your kids shouldn't be playing on the playground. I mean, they shouldn't be going and playing on the playgrounds in Broomfield, Louisville, Boulder, or anywhere else as well. But just because we can't control their playgrounds, I don't think that we should communicate any kind of message that we want to wait for everybody else on this. Let's be proactive. Let's close down our playgrounds. I'm not particular about whether that's, to Ken's point, with signs or with caution tape, but let's tell the community you shouldn't be touching things in the playground right now. That's dangerous for the entire community.
And I think it's also important to let people know that they're not, even if the town is spraying them down daily, that it's not a guarantee that it's disinfected, because if we spray it down in the morning and somebody touches it an hour later, then we've got a problem. So I certainly wouldn't want the community relying on the fact that the town is disinfecting them to think that they are safe. So, and with respect to a shelter in place order, my understanding is typically when these shelter in place orders come down, they are really temporary, right? There's a bank robbery and there's somebody running around with a gun. So you need to shelter in place wherever you are, not just in your home. Or there's a tornado that is ripping through the town, and it's a very temporary thing. And then all of a sudden the threat is eliminated and they can lift the shelter in place order. A long-term shelter in place order means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Does it mean that you can travel, to various places? Does it mean you can go for a walk? I think most people think that if you're going to be extending something like this for a prolonged period of time, it needs to be reasonable. And you certainly want to encourage people to get out of their houses, go for a walk on a nice day and enjoy our trails and things like that. What we just don't want to do is we don't want to have people touching things and spreading the virus unnecessarily. So I think that that's just really what we need to do, is communicate the fact that the playgrounds themselves, as lovely as they are in ordinary times, these aren't ordinary times, and they just need to be avoided temporarily during the state of emergency that we're declaring.
So this is our first virtual meeting, and so we're learning. And one of the things we're learning is we're going to have to stick on agenda. And so the agenda topic now is announcements, and we've traditionally used those announcements to request that staff increase signage or patrol in a particular area. And I think Mark's request to increase signage around what is publicly known around the dangers. I know, Broomfield restaurants have signs on their door. Boulder County restaurants do not have signs on the door. Increasing signage, I think, is a great request and perfectly appropriate with the agenda. What I'm hearing from Laura is we should shut down the playgrounds. That's not an agenda item, and so we can't make that decision right now to do so. But I do think it is appropriate to use this forum to take somebody's pulse. I absolutely would not be supportive of legislating at that level in advance of the state, under no circumstance, unless I felt the state was, I don't want to say under no circumstance, but unless I really felt like the state and the county were completely failing us. At this point, I think the governor's doing a really nice job. He is obviously trying to avoid a shelter in place. Anything that we could do to encourage our residents to stay where they are so we don't have an official shelter in place order out there, I think makes great sense. And we should be increasing signage. As leaders in the community, we should be doing everything we can, but I want to be careful that I feel like we either crossed the line or we got awfully close to crossing the line there around having a dialogue around shutting down parks, which I think it would be premature. If we want to have, Laura, if you want to request that as an agenda item, I think you should request it, and maybe we'll talk about it next time if you have support.
Sure.
Yeah, Kevin, I appreciate the kind of check in there about our procedure. We have kind of moved from board comments to board discussion. I would like to kind of take that cue to go back to just board announcements and taking the pulse of people. And
the point in raising it, though, is I think that the town needs to send out a communication to the public. That's what I'm looking for, is be smart, people. The playgrounds aren't necessarily free of viruses. So, our recommendation is that you don't let your kids climb all over the playground equipment.
Agreed. And I've done 2 announcements, and I intend to keep doing that, and would appreciate anyone's suggestions, after the meeting or just over time, is what should be included in those communications, or if you feel like the communication should be in some different format that I'm doing it, appreciate that suggestion as well. So.
Yeah, the one comment, I don't think it would hurt for us to put some signage up at the parks that just encourage people not to be there, that it's not safe. We're not telling them they can't, but it's a friendly reminder that it's not a good idea. So if, depending on how hard it would be for staff to put some signs together, I think it would be a great idea.
Okay. All right, good suggestion. All right, who are we on? I'm sorry, I lost track of who we were on for comments. Ken, was that?
I'm happy to go next.
Okay.
Clint, I will say I really appreciate the messages you've been sending out to the community. I think there's good subject matter in there, and I think they've been well stated. So wanted to say thank you for that. One thing that I would like to have or a support from the board going forward as direction to staff is I want to make sure that we are thinking about continuity operations, not necessarily for town government, but for ensuring that should worst case scenarios occur, we are still able to meet the basic needs of the residents of our town. So where I'm going with that is needing to be able to support businesses that are critical to our health, safety, and welfare. So grocery stores, restaurants. We know that businesses are struggling right now, given the orders at the state level. I would be in favor of seeing ideas for how we can support them, whether it's with short-term loans, whether there's grants that we can start thinking about. I'd like to make sure that we are there to support the community to make sure that everybody can have the services available to meet their needs. Further, I think that would also include nonprofits that are supporting our community. Off the top of my head, I know we support Coal Creek Meals on Wheels. If that is something we want to support at a higher level to ensure that we can get food directly to our residents, I think that's another important piece, and we should be considering. I want to know what type of contingency plans we have in case this private infrastructure starts to fail and there's supply chain disruptions. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we can get the infrastructure in place to get food to people if it needs to occur, and whether that means we're coordinating with the Office of Emergency Management or whatever partners it may be. I want to make sure that we have those plans in place, and would like to see that from staff. Further, I think hearing additional ideas around individuals as well. We know that unemployment rate has been skyrocketing over the past week with all the closures of businesses, and people may be having a hard time making ends meet. And yes, the federal government is stepping in to help meet that demand, but I don't know if that's going to occur. And I think to an extent that's large enough to make sure people can meet their basic needs. So any type of brainstorming we can do on programs that we can offer for Superior residents that are both efficient and are something that would be worthwhile for a scale for an individual, and that we can do in a sustainable way would be appreciated. I know that FEMA will meet any of our expenditures for food, water, ice, etc., at a 75% cost share match. So there are resources out there now to make sure we're meeting the needs of our residents. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Who would like to go next? Laura?
I will. So I kind of going to our earlier topic. First, apologies for going off agenda. As I had emailed on Sunday, I would really like to see us take a proactive stance rather than waiting for other authorities to take action when it comes to protecting the health of our residents. I would really like to see us potentially take a shelter in place, potentially officially close the playgrounds and send a strong message out about that. So I'd be looking for a second to put this on another special meeting, because I do not think we should wait for April 13th to be making these sorts of moves. Is anyone willing to second that we have an agenda discussion about this topic?
I need to know more about what exactly like a shelter in place would be. So, because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm not prepared to second that without kind of knowing what it is that you actually mean by that.
Sure. What I'm looking for is not, to your point, it means a lot of different things, and different municipalities have taken it differently. I would not be looking for us to necessarily be policing the streets, issuing tickets to those who are out, but I would like us to issue to issue an order to the people of Superior that you should be home unless it is for essential business, groceries, medication, or other life-sustaining activities. And I think the sooner we can put that strong message out to our community, the better. Right now, people are not taking it seriously, and that's a huge concern for the health of not only just our community, but the state as a whole.
I guess my reaction to that is I agree with that message, and kind of similar to the message that we're sending out with respect to playgrounds. This is a question of, you know, messaging, and like I fully support the town encouraging people to not use the playground equipment and not take unnecessary, you know, trips and, you know, socially distance. I don't think that we have, in terms of the communications that we've sent out so far, adequately, you know, communicated the need and desire for everybody to socially distance. But like implementing a separate policy is, I think, a bigger discussion. So I'm supportive of messaging. I'm not necessarily supportive of adopting a formal policy.
Agreed. And what I'm looking for right now is not necessarily for people to agree to a policy, but I'm looking, is anyone interested in having this discussion about what this policy could look like and what we should be doing to protect our residents?
We've got a couple of other board members that haven't spoken yet on their announcements or comments. So why don't we have them, if they have any comments on this, let's have them do so at that time.
Okay, so no second from anyone on this?
Well, again, I think keeping in the theme of let's make our announcements, and then if we have further business that we want to do at a later time, then maybe we notice it for later. But I think we're kind of moving in that direction of trying to create agenda items here, which we probably shouldn't be.
Agreed. And that's my question, is not to discuss this today. My question is anyone else interested in having this discussion at a later date before our April meeting?
Let's have those that haven't spoken speak to that if they would like to. And then if anyone's already spoken and they want to come back to it, let's have them circle back to it at the end of comments. So did you have any other announcements?
Yeah, I'll go. My microphone died, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. I don't have any prepared remarks other than, we're all going through this together. The company I work for, we're struggling to make payroll. We haven't been closed down, but a lot of our funding sources have dried up because the equity markets have disappeared. My elderly parents, I'm paranoid about, all last week they kept running to the store to stock up before we kind of put the hammer down and told them to just stay at home. My brother's family just flew in through Ethiopia yesterday. We had to say hello to them from across the driveway. So this is real for all of us. We're all going through it. We're all doing the best that we can. We've got side jobs, but we're all committed to this community, and we're going to do what we need to do to help it. To the conversation that's going on right now, I am not in the space of wanting to lay down a set of rules for the town of Superior. I'm going to continue to look to our governor to set the standard for what it is that we should be doing as a state and as a community. And I got to say, with a lot of the folks I work with in other states, Colorado is doing a phenomenal job right now. And I'm really glad we have the people that we have at the state level to help drive us through this. It's not great. Things could be better in every way, shape, and form. But I think, as a whole, there is no one here more committed to the safety and security of the town of Superior than us. But we are going to try to pull in as much help as we can get along the way.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Who'd like to go next?
I don't have anything in particular outside of, I think it's nice to see everybody. It's what a weird week or two this has been. I think the virtual meeting has worked pretty well. And, to Neil's point, there's probably a lot of folks in the community that need our support, need the support of their neighbors. So I think just us continuing to be out there, the best way to do so, I suppose, is, Clint, I commend you on those emails. I think they're great. If anybody reaches out to the town and maybe needs help, hopefully Matt will let us know who might need some help from a resource perspective. I know there's a lot of other folks that are out there reaching out on social media, but the economy is, this is going to be a major issue. We're going to of a lot of businesses that dry up. I mean, I work in healthcare, and we are worried about our partners and our clients and even our business. So this is going to get a lot, unfortunately, it's likely to get a lot worse before it gets better. So just need to be there for each other.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Sandy?
I have nothing in particular to add other than I think we have to all be very sensitive to the positions that each and every one of us in the community is in. There are people in our community who must continue to go to work because they provide essential health care, or, for example, in my case, I'm at a food bank where we are feeding people right now who are losing their jobs, and it's an essential service. We are struggling to get food out to people because we can't give them the quality of food that they've gotten in the past. So I appreciate the support of all the community members who have supported local nonprofits, including our food banks, to make sure that those who are losing their jobs have food to eat because they don't have income anymore. So let's continue to pull together and think about the different positions that each and every one of us may be in, because they are not all the same. And, you know, we need to think about each other and not be judgmental of the things people are doing.
Thanks, Sandy. Did we miss anyone? Or is it my turn? Okay, I'll go. So last week I was in Washington, D.C. for the whole week. For the front half of the week, it was the National League of Cities conference, and that is elected officials from around the country that attend that conference. And it's kind of a part continuing education, part networking, and learned a lot of really great things and you know, kind of best practices from other elected officials. So really appreciated that opportunity. There's also a focus on getting over to Capitol Hill and engaging with our legislators, and so that's another opportunity for National League of Cities. The second half of the week was the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition annual trip to DC, and that group flew in on Wednesday evening. During the day on Wednesday, myself, Mayor of Louisville staff, Mayor of Boulder, and Mayor of Longmont had a series of 3 different meetings about airport noise with our staff from both U.S. Senators' offices and Congressman Negus's office. And those were very productive meetings, and good to continue that dialogue. On Thursday was the day when the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition would go around to all the congressional delegations' offices, federal agencies, and others. And as you recall, last Thursday is kind of when everything hit the fan, and it was an interesting experience to be on Capitol Hill and in the offices of our congressmen and U.S. senators as this was all unfolding, and they were trying to grapple with it. And I must say they are fully engaged and are working for us and are really working for the health of the nation. So I really appreciate their dedication. The meetings were pretty much all ended on Thursday, and we left either late Thursday or Friday. I appreciate and concur with all the comments that others on the board have made. I've, through this last week, I've attempted to, do my best to kind of keep up with what's going on. I've had many conference calls with other mayors and individuals from around the region, and even some national conference calls, just trying to stay updated as best as possible, and then trying to craft that information into what is relevant for Superior residents. And it's been challenging. We don't get a to-do manual on how to do a crisis like this, so we kind of have to figure it out. I appreciate Town Manager Matt Magley and all the staff for kind of pulling together and helping me and the entire board get through this, for putting together this meeting platform quickly. This I think has been a great solution. I think years past we would just have been forced to just kind of do nothing now we're able to communicate and get things done. I want to thank everyone in the community for their individual and group efforts. TJ and the chamber have been very active in trying to help our struggling small businesses, particularly restaurants that are going to have a very difficult, are already having a very difficult time. And it's just essentially been a week since it's kind of been shut down. Thanks to residents who've put together groups to help neighbors to shovel snow or to go get groceries or help those in need, and encourage people to continue that. We've got many residents in the community that are in the healthcare industry and that are going to work every day not knowing if they're going to have protective equipment, not knowing if they're going to have enough test kits for all the people that show up for tests. And so really want to thank them for their service, for the first responders for their service, showing up on scene and not knowing who they're dealing with. So we're in very trying and difficult times, and so appreciate everyone's patience and compassion in getting through this. And we absolutely encourage our state and federal leaders to really keep pressing for all the equipment and supplies that our healthcare workers and first responders need to get through this crisis. And finally, on social distancing, I agree completely with what all of my colleagues have said, and the range of different concerns is absolute. We're gonna get through this faster if we can respect that this virus spreads very quickly and in unknown ways. And the more that we can keep our distance and keep vigilant on that, hopefully the quicker we will get through this. So that is all the comments I had. Does anyone have any closing comments from the board? And then we'll offer an opportunity for any public comment.
I just have one request. Laura, if you could circulate your request for an additional agenda item via email so we can understand specifically what you're asking for, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. My request to put this out in public is I'd like to have a discussion of actions that Superior can and should take to protect our residents, independent of what the state and federal government is already doing.
And I'd be happy to include any and all of that in future communications. So if you want to send that to me, I mean, I don't think we need board action to communicate things to residents. I'm more than happy to communicate. I'm not looking just for us to write up a communication. I'd really like to discuss as a board everything from what can we be doing to protect the small businesses in our community to what are the things we should be telling the public in order to keep them social distancing. So it's a broad range of topics. I'm trying not to get too specific on it right now because, to Kevin's point, this hasn't been agenda'd, but I think we ought to have another special meeting to discuss these topics well prior to our April 13th meeting. This is something that is affecting Superior residents and small businesses right now. And I would like to see us discuss as a board what we can do as soon as possible.
So I'm supportive of having a discussion about solutions in general, but I mean, typically when we're agending an item like this, it would be for a policy, a specific policy that we would be implementing and voting on. This sounds like more like having a retreat discussion on putting our heads together on creative solutions. So I guess that's why I'm supportive of having any and all discussions. I just wanted to understand specifically what we're talking about doing here.
So would there be interest from the rest of the board then in having a special retreat in the next week to discuss this?
My preference going forward, Matt has heard all of this. I had suggestions similar to what you're suggesting, Laura. I don't want to pile on to staff what they cannot handle. I think what I'd like to see is a report back from staff after this meeting about what can and cannot be implemented and what their preferred path forward is, and what the plan, what they will implement. And if there is concern or further discussion that needs to take place after we see that report back from staff, I would say that might be the time to cross the path of looking for another special meeting. And at that point, if there's more that we can do or should talk about, I would support it. But I don't necessarily want to have that before I know what staff has capacity and ability to do right now.
So Matt and Martin, when would we be able to see kind of that list of what staff is able to work on?
But I mean, it would be no earlier till the end of next week. I mean, with everything else we've got going on, I just don't see how we can pull anything together in that.
And that was my exact concern. Their staff is working to make sure A, they're all safe. Health and welfare of staff is incredibly important, but B, there's just so much going on. I don't know how much more we can add to their plates without diverting the necessary resources to what they're already trying to tackle. That's my primary concern.
I understand that we have a lot going on, but dealing with this and protecting our residents, that's, in my opinion, the top priority right now. We need to address this quickly, not wait weeks to see what the state does, what the federal government does, and not push this to the bottom of our list.
And other than essential personnel, which is police, fire, and our public works and parks field crews, which most recently was dealing with the snowstorm. That's basically all the staff is working on is this crisis.
Understood. I just think I think we as a board need to understand what are all the actions that are being taken. How can we better protect our residents?
Well, this is starting to feel like a meeting again, so I'm going to step in. Laura,
what I'm asking is, can we have a special meeting to discuss this? This is a critical topic to protect our community. And what I'm hearing is no one wants to have a discussion on this.
Mark threw a softball, which was, if you have a specific proposal, you could request it over email the way we've done in the past, that your proposal is going to be, I want to create legislation for X that does Y. If there's a second, then our policy is we'll discuss it at the next board meeting. If you decide that there's also urgency and you'd like it accelerated before the next board meeting, I think you could also request that. But I have a very strong point of view here that my point of view is not being expressed because I do not think it is in the spirit of what all of us agreed to have a dialogue. If you have somebody else to support your conversation, then I will express my point of view. But for now, I'm just not.
Since the beginning of this meeting, is there anyone else who supports having this conversation? It sounds like the answer is no, so I will drop it if that is the case. I already sent a proposal out on Sunday, didn't get a second via email. I'd like to propose this in a public forum, and what I'm hearing right now in a public forum is that no one else has interest in discussing. Is that accurate? Okay.
That's not accurate. I mean, I'm interested in having a discussion, but I need to understand what it is that we're discussing. And I agree, with Ken's point that, I don't want to just convene a meeting for us to have an open-ended discussion if there isn't a specific policy that is, being suggested. So if you have like specific policies that you want to see implemented, my recommendation is to circulate that via email, and then we can consider that and then second it or not. And then to Kevin's point, if it is, urgent, then we'll convene a special meeting to act on it appropriately. But, staff is already thin in terms of, who's in person working. And I agree that we shouldn't unnecessarily, drain resources from them just so we could have a discussion. We need to be efficient and we need to be specific as to, what it is that we're actually proposing here. So I'm open to seconding things, but I need to understand what it is that I'm seconding, and just having a discussion of what can we do is, I don't think necessarily the right way to go.
So to Ken's point, I think it's impossible for me to propose something specific until we have that list of what staff is doing. Understand that that's something staff is working on and is trying to get to us, but I think it's a mistake that we're not going to be able to even start having that discussion or start putting together options for a week. I think we need to move faster than that. So I will drop it. I'm not trying to have a meeting right now about this. I understand it's not on the agenda, but I'm very disappointed that we can't all agree that this is an important topic that we need to prioritize.
It is.
I
It
don't
is a
want
very
my-
important topic, but
Yeah, yeah,
what my
I don't-
request is to
I
have a
do not like that
specific
characterization.
request. Yeah, and I don't like that characterization either, Laura. So,
Okay, but
so
Ken-
suggest what it is that you want to discuss, so we can actually consider it. But just saying let's have another meeting and have another discussion isn't going to cut it. It's not specific enough for us to understand.
I feel very stuck here. I can't name a specific policy or else I'm talking outside of agenda. I would prefer to raise this here rather than over email, which the public cannot see. I also, to Ken's point, I don't know what the prioritized list is that staff is doing, so that makes it difficult for me to propose legislation or something specific like that. I think what would be great would be, again, if we could, I think a discussion is important. I think we all have opinions on what we would like to see happen. I'd like to see us discuss those.
And I think we've had a very good meeting here. We've ratified 2 very important pieces of business. And we've also had the opportunity for each board member to go around and express, their range of opinion on these issues. And we've seen that. We've seen a range of opinions, and we respect your position. I respect everyone else's position. So this is a continually evolving situation. We've pulled all of this together in the period of less than a week. So I think if situation warrants that we need to pull something else together in very short order, I have no doubt that we can do that. But I think at this point, we need to move on to any final announcements from board or staff, and then I'd like to offer an opportunity for public comment and then conclude the meeting. Anyone else have any final board comments? Okay, is there anyone in the public that is viewing or online that would like to type a message in the chat or signal with hand raised to make public comment? All right, I'm not seeing any, so anything further from anyone? All right, with that, we will adjourn our very first virtual meeting. Thank you all for your time, and stay strong and stay healthy, everyone. Good night.